Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is day 3 of the True North Health Center week, and our guest works at True North. He does phone coaching, and you're going to get to know him a little bit today, and his name is Chris Rhule, and please welcome him to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chef AJ. I've been hoping to meet you for quite some time after coming to True North.
Well, thank you. And I've heard good things about you from Dr. Goldhammer, and I'd love to know your story. How the heck did a Canadian end up working at True North?
Yeah, it's actually been an interesting journey to get here because I've had a sister that went plant-based several years ago, and in my family that was a big thing, right? To go plant-based because we were all typical kind of meat eaters in the family. And she just did it because she felt better and because she didn't want to hurt animals and stuff like that. But I was at the time practicing up in Canada in cardiac surgery, and of all people, you'd think I would be the one that would be jumping on board to something like this to look at the benefits. But I definitely was not in the know at that time, and I continued to do my kind of standard diet that I always did, and then after a couple more years, I had another sister that actually went to True North and spent a month in True North for some medical reasons. She at the time was not plant-based, and had just a really life-changing kind of experience at True North, and then adopted the SOS whole food plant-based diet. And over the course of a year and a half to 2 years, her medical conditions were much better, and she'd lost about 100 pounds. And so that was, how I kind of got introduced to True North before that. But yeah, like I started practicing in the US, out of school. And that was back in the late 1990s, 1999. I graduated from school and I worked in cardiac surgery right out of school. And so I got to see firsthand, what happens to people on a standard American diet. The real shame in the whole thing is, as you probably are well aware, in the medical system and medical education, we get like very little or no nutritional education, which is, I think we're so pharmacological based and procedure based in medical training now. I think that's a huge oversight, and hopefully in the future that will change. But yeah, so I was dealing with patients, but yet still myself eating standard American diet. I was exercising every day and doing all the other things I was learned through the years that you got to take care of yourself. But I was still eating meat and often more than once a day often, right, at the time, even though I was like going into the operating room and operating on people with blockages in their hearts. So it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I totally understand where patients come from now, right, when they show up.
You actually operated on people?
Yeah, so initially, early in my career, I was assisting in the operations for coronary artery bypass grafting, valvular procedures where we're replacing valves in the heart, some aortic kind of procedures as well, and other vascular procedures. And so, yeah, it was a super high intensity kind of role right out of school, which everyone thought I was crazy. But I kind of jumped into it. Yeah.
When in my 20s, I was a respiratory therapist, and as part of my training, we had to observe open heart surgery. And I remember standing there behind the surgeon for 8 hours thinking, oh, I'm going to pass out. I don't know how you guys do it. The worst part, believe it or not, for me was when they cut the chest open, because when they burned the flesh, I mean, it smelled like a human barbecue.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I still have that smell very vividly embedded into my brain from all the ORs I had, for sure. Well, we share something in common, because I was also started my journey into healthcare as a respiratory therapist.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Yeah, that's a tough job. I mean, because you're seeing mostly sick people with lung disease, and except for maybe asthma, most people with lung disease aren't going to get better.
Yeah, for sure. No, respiratory therapy is a very difficult job. The beauty of respiratory therapy, I went into that, I actually got exposed. So here, back in early 1990s, at the very beginning of the Gulf War, I ended up leaving Canada and going down and joining the US Navy. and spent 4 years, in the U.S. Navy. And unfortunately, that's about three plus years into the Navy, I ended up having some really bad back issues, and I was in terrible pain. And I found out I had tumors in my spine. And so they actually had to operate and remove some tumors out of my spine. And that's my first exposure to the healthcare system, right? Because when you're young, you're never seen by doctors. You don't go into the medical system unless there's something wrong with you, right? And so I got exposed to the hospital system, and that opened up a whole new kind of world to me that I hadn't even thought about for, a potential, occupation or anything like that before. But it was really interesting. And so I got to meet a couple of respiratory therapists at that time. And that's how I got kind of introduced into respiratory therapy, and ended up getting out of the service after my surgery. I healed. It took a long time to heal, but got out and went right into school to be a respiratory therapist. And then worked there for a bit before I went back and got accepted to PA school.
Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't realize you could join the armed forces if you were from another country.
Yeah, I actually have dual citizenship. So my dad's American. All my sisters I got 4 sisters. They were all born in the US. And so I was the only one born in Canada, but I got my passport and ended up, having the dual citizenship so I could actually do that. I was actually in the Canadian Army for a short period of time before I even joined the US Navy.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. It was a great, wonderful experience for sure.
I know I've had people on from the Army, and I know what that food's like. Is the Navy food any better?
Yeah, it's interesting because I picked a trade in the Navy that's completely different than healthcare. It was avionics. And so the schooling was quite long, longer than a lot of the different schools in the Navy. And so I was pretty much stateside for most of the time I was in there, because by the time I got out from my schooling, my ship was in dry dock. So I was on a naval air station instead of on the ship. And then after a while, I ended up having, the back pain, the tumors. And so I never even made it to the ship.
That's amazing. So just in case somebody doesn't know, you're a PA. That stands for physician's assistant. And is that relatively new a career? Because I know like 60 years ago, I don't remember seeing them around.
Yeah, so physician assistants have been around in the US since late 1960s, so like 68, 69. So what happened was the medics that came back from Vietnam had a lot of kind of trauma and exposure in the field, right, the battlefield, and they had nothing to do, and yet there was this big shortage, especially in rural America, for healthcare providers. So Dr. Eugene Stead out of the Duke University in North Carolina created this kind of proposal and started this initiative to, well, why don't we use these folks, give them some additional training, and then we can call them physician assistants, and they could, work in various kind of settings to kind of augment the physicians in various areas. Well, since that time, it's grown to be a really massive profession. There's, well over 175,000 PAs practicing in the US and practicing in all areas of medicine and surgery. And our training is, very unique because even we're trained in the medical model, very similar to physicians, and oftentimes in the faculty of medicine along with doctors in training. But the depth of the education is just slightly less, and then less time afterwards. So, like for example, most, if not all, are master's programs, usually 24 to 36 months in duration, but we don't have a residency afterwards, and so we do kind of on-the-job training, and we have a lot of flexibility as a PA to be able to choose specialties. And actually, like for instance, I came out of PA school, went right into cardiac surgery, but it could have been any specialty. So it's kind of unique that way, and not having the residency. You also have some more portability, which makes it attractive to people, because you can decide that you're going to transition into a different specialty, and you can do that without any problems or having to take any special certifications or anything like that. And then again, do the kind of training on the job in that new specialty with a physician. And so under our, licenses and our experience, we're allowed to pretty much do a mirror image of what the physicians are able to do under physician supervision, as long as, you have the experience, the expertise, and the physician's comfortable with you doing it. Yeah.
So pretty much as long as the physician says it's okay, you can do anything they can do?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's how I ended up in cardiac surgery, and, coming right out of school and going to the OR, learning how to, take veins out of legs and arteries out of arms for the bypass surgeries and assisting. And so it was like full on, right out of school. So, yeah.
Do you think that the individuals that do that surgery, or in any capacity they're in the operating room, do you think they ever make the connection how bizarre it is to do that when all you have to do is eat right and not develop heart disease in the first place?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure they do. I mean, everyone's, they grow up in an educational system that talks about, okay, patients need to eat properly, eat healthy, exercise, so diet and exercise, but that's it. Like, there's no deep education into the especially into like a whole food plant-based diet, and talking about all the phytonutrients, phytochemicals, and all the wonderful things that you find in plants. That is not even on the radar. It may be changing now in the last few years, but I still think the vast majority neglect to go into nutrition the way that they really should. Definitely.
And people say that asking people to eat a healthy or a low-fat plant-based diet is extreme. They've never seen open heart surgery, apparently.
Yeah, that's, I think, Dr. Clapper is one famous for saying something very similar to that to people in a talk. And, I would, I 100% agree. You can go to almost any procedure, right? And say that this procedure, that's extreme. To change your diet, which is a very, it's not easy, but it's a simple thing that can be done. That is definitely not extreme. To change what you're putting into your mouth, what you're consuming, is much, much less extreme than going under the knife for any reason, right?
And it doesn't fix the problem, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that they're not going to have future episodes of heart.
No, absolutely. Like, until you go after the root cause of any disease, you're not really doing anything but put a Band-Aid over it for the most part. Most, if not all medication, I wouldn't say all, but the vast majority of medications are basically doing that. They're putting a Band-Aid over whatever they're treating. Suppressing symptoms, treating pain, lowering, glucose levels, but they're not going to the root cause of what's creating it in the first place. And until you do that, then nothing's going to change. And usually the diseases or the problems just continue to progress, maybe a little bit slower than they would otherwise, but they continue to progress for sure. Yeah. And this is something that I, have, just recently come into, right? Because I've only been plant-based, whole food plant-based now for a year and a half, almost about a year and a half, just over a year and a half now. Because before, like I said, I was on kind of a standard American, standard Canadian diet, right? It wasn't until I traveled, extensively that I got exposed to more vegetarian cultures and vegan cultures. Basically in 2014, I took a sabbatical after, spending 14 years in cardiac surgery. Needed to de-stress and just take a break. And so I decided I was going to take a 6-month sabbatical and kind of travel, and ended up, in a 6-year sabbatical, then traveling around the world, experiencing, all kinds of different cultures in 60 different countries, right? And during that process, it opened up a whole new world to me, to more cultures that were definitely more vegetarian or vegan orientated around the world, and seeing how that changed the health and lifestyle in those areas, as well as it opened me up to much more of a spiritual experience that I just was not in that mindset whatsoever. I was very science-based, very logical, almost to the point where it was exclusionary, because like we talked about already, I was here operating on people's hearts, but not putting it together with the food, to the point where it absolutely should have been, right?
That's amazing. I you have been to 60 countries, and in 60 years, I've been to only 2 other than the United States. What was your favorite
Wow.
one?
Ooh, tough question, because there's so many different unique things about different places. But I would say if I had to choose one country in the world, probably Myanmar, the old former Burma, just because the people there are very special, very, very special. I feel bad for them because the government's, it's been really rough and very kind of dictatorship type of government. But the people are incredibly beautiful, and it's such a poor country, developing country, but they'll give you the shirt off their back, or they'll give you their bed in their kind of shed that they live in to sleep in. If you go see them, they'll give you everything that they have, pretty much. It's just unbelievable.
Wow. What country had the best food and what country had the worst food?
Wow, interesting question. Well, I think, it would have been really interesting if I was vegan while I was traveling, which I wasn't, because that would have been a whole another experience. Because there were some vegans on the trip, on my travels. I met lots of them, and they discussed how difficult it was in some parts of the world or some countries. But I was kind of eating anything and everything at the time, so I got to experience whatever I wanted. But I would say food-wise, in the Asian countries probably is most of my favorite type of foods. Asia, and of course Italy, and Mexico. Probably those three areas or countries, yeah, would be my favorite foods.
Wow. How does that compare to the food at True North? Chef Bravo was on yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you know what? They do a fantastic job trying to mix things up. Changing around the varieties of foods to get, especially. And I've seen even since I've been here, they're trying to add some like new things. Like we have some dressings now that are Indian spice dressings and different things like that. So I think it's changed quite a bit from a while ago. But it's definitely different for sure.
Well, before they had Chef Bravo, I hear that Dr. Goldhammer did the cooking, and people got a salad or something like that.
Oh,
That was
yeah. I'm glad I'm here now.
yeah,
I'm pretty spoiled, I think.
So you did a very extended internship before becoming a staff doctor at True North, right?
Yeah, so I ended up, because of my sister's experience and going to Australia. I was kind of, still in my travel mode. The pandemic was just at the very beginning stages of being talked about. And I ended up going to visit my sister in Australia I think it was February of 2020. And that's when the pandemic was just starting to get kind of announced full on. And at the time I was working in China, and so I wasn't even allowed to go back to China. So I figured I'd take an extended vacation with my sister in Australia, and she was SOS whole food plant-based. And so that was my kind of exposure. I just jumped right in from a standard diet into the whole food plant-based SOS free diet with her because it was easy. She's already living that way, right? And so the transition from that perspective was pretty easy because she was making the food and I was enjoying it, but it was a bit different for sure on the palate, right? Because now you're going without the oils, salts, and sugars, and so that it took probably a few weeks for that transition to kind of come around and make it easier, more palatable. Through that experience, I did learn that spice was my best friend. And so I started learning things about spices I've never learned before. I tried spices I've never had before, even through all my travels, getting exposed to different spices. I started incorporating some of those and then new ones just for experimentation, just to help with the flavor,
That's interesting that you went the whole way, whole food and SOS free at the same time, because a lot of people, they're already vegan. I don't think people are SOS free and then become vegan, but a lot of people are vegan and then get introduced to SOS free, both at the same time, unless they get there through True North.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's pretty unusual. Like even the people that come to True North that are vegan already, I would say a very, very, very small percentage of them are SOS free, for sure. Right. So that is very unusual. It just happened my sister was living that way after her stay at True North, so it made it super easy for me to do it.
How did your sister find out about True North?
I think she had just kind of searched it on Google, and she was looking for any alternative. As many of our people that come to True North, there a lot of them have been through the traditional system, Western medicine system, and they just haven't got the results that they are looking for, and they start looking for different alternative avenues to go down, and that's how she came up with True North and did a bit more research. She also went to Hippocrates before that, and then she got some reaffirmation from people at Hippocrates that had been to True North, and so yeah, she came here and had a wonderful stay. I think she was here for about a month or a little over a month. Yeah.
Has she maintained the changes she made in her health? Has she been able to maintain them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is probably 3 or 4 years later now, I'd say. And she's most of the weight that she lost, like she lost over 100 pounds during the course of about 2 years, probably. Most of that has stayed off now. And she is primarily still I wouldn't say she's 100% SOS free, but probably in the good 90+% range. And yeah, she's maintained almost all of the benefits that she got.
That's amazing. So that inspired you to do an internship at True North?
Yeah, so that brought me to True North because I saw the amazing differences in her and personally, and so I was like, well, I got to check this out. Coming from, I'm always skeptical, right? I'm a just natural skeptic, and coming from the science-based Western medicine approach from before, and especially from the surgical part, right? Even more so, I was like, okay, I got to see what this is all about, and kind of see, how they're doing this, like what's the magic, right? What's this magic? Well, there's got to be more to it than just eating right and no salt, oil, or sugar, and then fasting. There's got to be more to it. And so I decided to set up a 6-month internship at True North, and just kind of come and take a look. And so 2 months into that internship, I had seen some just amazing transformations in people's health, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, that it was just like, whoa, there is really something to this. Like, it just so many people, it was undeniable. And so I was like, I was sold. I drank the Kool-Aid for sure, no question. And then Dr. Goldhammer offered me a job 2 months into the stay, which it was pretty quick, I thought. And I was like, yes, definitely, yeah.
Oh, that's I love that. Drink the Kool-Aid. I think that's exactly, I've heard that been said before. And you mentioned you've seen a lot of transformations in patients' health. Ramses, the chef who was on yesterday, I asked him, has he seen any miracles in the 14 years he was there? And he told a story about a woman who basically came in blind and walked out sighted. So what kind of miracles have you seen?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen anything like that as far as the coming in blind, walking out seeing, but I've seen so many things in the last year and a half here, and even some of my own patients that I'm treating personally, their personal experiences and journeys that they've gone through. So I've seen many people that come in with like really, really bad diabetes and terrible blood sugars with all kinds of secondary conditions from their diabetes, because as you know, diabetes is a really chronic debilitating disease that can cause all sorts of problems. And I've seen their blood sugars normalize. I've seen them come off of their insulin and oral medications. I've seen their peripheral neuropathy improve. I've seen all kinds of really positive changes on a lot of the different chronic diseases like diabetes. Hypertension is just amazing what happens here. When you fast and go and change your nutrition, there's people that come in here, they're really like super hypertensive, even kind of hypertensive emergencies I've seen, number wise, when people arrive, and then they walk out with normal blood pressure. So and with that in mind, coming up probably early next year, we're going to be doing a hypertension study here, and I'll be the lead attending on that study, and so I'm really excited to get numbers of patients that we can kind of publish, because when you see it all the time, right? For us, it's like second nature, but for people out in the outside world, it's like something that it's unbelievable to them, right? To physicians, that you can treat hypertension in this way. Lots of different lymphomas where the tumors kind of shrink dramatically, or even have kind of disappeared, after fasting. I've seen cancers that have improved in the same way with the tumor size. And so it's been just so many different things that have kind of come up that I've seen. And also like the autoimmune ones, that's a tough one, right? All these autoimmune conditions that people struggle with, they have, they're living in such terrible discomfort, and pains and different processes. But to see some of these, they may have been suffering for decades, even some of them, and to see some of them have the improvements that they have in their joints, their joint function, their pain levels, and different, other areas of problems from their autoimmune diseases is amazing. Like, you go to rheumatology for these same issues and you're thrown on these really toxic medications. And for some people, they have to be on them. But there are some people that respond so well just to the fasting and or nutritional changes that it's just kind of mind-blowing to me, coming from Western medicine kind of practice, to see these things happen in such severe cases that you would never even imagine, right? That was a possibility.
I wonder what would happen if all healthcare professionals had to do even a 1-month internship at True North.
Oh, you know what? I think it'd be amazing if all healthcare education incorporated something like this into their program as an actual clinical experience. I think we'd be much better off, much better off. There's no question. Because of that lack of education in the medical education system, they just aren't exposed to either the knowledge or even the clinical exposure to, what you can do, the power of nutrition, the power of plants, the power of fasting. Even though fasting's been done for, thousands of years, and especially in different religions, there's a reason why they used to do this fasting, right? And so it's just, it falls off people's radar. It's just that the knowledge hasn't been passed forward on the medical side, like it really should have been.
Is there anything like a True North in Canada?
Not that I'm aware of. I've looked before, and there's obviously, it's like everywhere else, there's like juicing places and detoxification places and different things like that specialize in those kind of detoxification protocols, but nothing like True North, no.
When you mentioned standard Canadian diet, is that as bad as the standard American diet?
It's pretty similar, yeah, pretty similar. In Canada, we might have like specific items that we would have up there, like poutine, where it's like French fries with a whole bunch of different condiments added to it, or different varieties of things added to it that's really bad for you. Or a lot of kind of different types of meats and stuff, the way they're prepared, but very, very similar. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest resistance is in your patients at True North to having them eat this way on a regular basis? Because they all do it while they're there, so we know it can be done and they reverse their diseases, but it seems like the rate of recidivism is very high for some people.
Yeah, and I think it's just the human condition, right? The human condition is, you're looking for something that's easy, right? Conserve energy, right? Get something that's going to bring you pleasure as well. And so the food that we kind of are prescribing here as part of their nutrition as their medicine for their health conditions doesn't give them that dopaminergic kind of surge that they get from the processed foods, which have been engineered to give them that, right? It doesn't give them that, so they don't satisfy these cravings that come up, because we're not giving them that surge of dopamine. And it's just tough because you go back into a real world where that's all you are surrounded by. Visually, in every direction you look, if you're out driving, you're seeing fast food places, you're seeing all the advertisements for different processed or fast foods. Almost all the restaurants you go to are gonna, even the healthiest options are gonna have oil, sugar, and salt probably in them for the most part. so, and just, social gatherings, and that's a real big one for people, right? That they go and they want to socialize with their friends, family, and the food options there are very, rarely going to be healthy. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is in today's society. And so there's a lot of places where they can kind of fall off, and get back into that pleasure trap, right? Like Dr. Lau and Dr. Goldhammer said, right? Once you get into the feeling that dopamine surge again, and that kind of satiation through that mechanism, it's tough, right? To go back away from it.
You mentioned the pleasure trap. Have you read the book since been working at True North?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's so bang on. Like, it's amazing that someone long before didn't come up with this, right? Because it makes so much sense, and it's kind of a simple theory, really, but it's so bang on, right?
I wonder what do you think trips the patients up the most? Because it always made me sad, because for about 10 years I used to do a program there that has since gone by the wayside, unfortunately, because it's so busy now with the fasting, called the Holiday Extravaganza, where I would be there for up to 5 weeks, and I'd see people do so beautifully and lose weight and reverse their disease, and then they'd come back sometimes even sicker and heavier. And
Yeah.
I wondered, I understand the concept of the pleasure trap, but I was wondering, like, what specifically was it? Was it that it was too hard just to be vegan? Was it the sugar? Was it the oil? Was it the salt? Have you heard from your patients what specifically about this makes it so difficult? I know the social aspect is probably one of the biggest driving forces.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a broad, there's lots of different reasons that I get. It's not just like, it'd be easy if it was all just like, one thing, but the socialization piece is probably one of the larger ones, like you said, because it's, this is so different nutritionally than what they're surrounded by in their friend circles, or at work, for instance. There's a lot of works where they do potlucks constantly or different things like that, and so it's so far off of their friends' radar or work colleagues' radar to have this nutrition. So it's so easy to kind of fall into that pleasure trap just based on the types of foods they're always exposed to, right? A lot of them, I would say the sugar is probably the biggest culprit out of the three, just because that dopaminergic kind of response is so immediate with the sugar, right? And so the sweet component is if they're going to be exposed to anything and kind of make them fall off, it would probably be sugar related, I think, more than the others.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because when I was talking to Chef Bravo yesterday, he was saying, at least from a culinary perspective, the sugar is the easiest to replace. And I myself was a pastry chef for 5 years and just used dates. So we can create some really delicious things that replicate exactly what people are using, but with fruit.
Yeah, so I think it's all an exposure and education piece, right? Because like you said, I myself as well, when I'm making something, because I got a little bit of a sweet tooth, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm using dates, I'm using maple syrup at times, to make some substitutions. They're easy substitutions to get away from the processed sugars, right? And so, yeah, there's really no reason other than, the education about how to do it, the showing them how to do it, recipes, that's a big one for a lot of people. They come in here and they just go, I need recipes because, if I'm going to, or my husband or wife will do it, but we just don't know where to look for recipes. And yet it's pretty easy to find out there now. There's quite a few places you can go online now where there is like SOS free vegan even recipes. And so, and a big one is also substitution lists. That's what helped me, because I wasn't much of a cook. I was okay of a cook before I went plant-based, but going plant-based forced me to really start cooking for myself and really researching into what I can do to make things healthier, so I could actually use recipes I liked, but then just substitute ingredients in them to make them healthier, right? And so through that process, I learned a lot about, the flaxseed instead of eggs, right? Or for binding things together, or using the aquafaba, from, like, say, for instance, the can of chickpeas, right? To substitute for oil, or using the dates as a sugar substitute. and spices. Like, oh my gosh, the world is your oyster when it comes to, well, that's probably a bad analogy, but the world's wide open when it comes to spices, because there are hundreds of different spices to add flavor to foods out there. And so I really opened up my kind of palate to these different spices and made it really interesting, because I thought it was going to be really boring, as I transition. And a lot of people are afraid of that. So I just tell them, you can be boring, but it doesn't have to be boring. You can, make these changes, to all of your foods, and just try something new, experiment, be open to that, and don't just always eat the same kind of foods.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a staff doctor at True North, are you medically supervising the fasting now?
Oh yeah, I've been doing that for several months now. Yeah. And it's been just such a wonderful experience to have that more personal connection. It's different, a lot different when you're actually the attending over, patients that are fasting compared to helping to manage the patients that are fasting in the facility for somebody else, right? You see, it's a lot more personal, and you get to know their stories a lot more in depth and detail, and you get to kind of make those connections deeper with the people that you're looking after, for sure. It's very different.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about the phone coaching that you're going to be doing now.
Yeah, sure. So like True North, I think the pandemic has done some wonderful things in some ways, with all the terrible things that have come on with it. One of the things is open people's minds up to doing things virtually, right? And to doing things online or over the phone that traditionally people weren't overly happy to do, or would even think would be something they'd be interested in. So True North has opened up a phone coaching service where you can actually go onto the website, and you can do your own scheduling on times that are convenient for you. You can look at the different providers that are providing the coach services. You can read up about them there, find if there's someone that you may feel like you might have a connection with. You can schedule your own appointments through that system, and then provide some information, basic information into the system that the provider can get ahead of time. And review before the coaching slot. And I think it's an amazing service to be able to provide people, because there's people from all over the world that can kind of get this get this information and get this service, and not have to necessarily come to True North for this service, or can't because of this current situation, right?
Can you even supervise a fast through the coaching service?
No, you can't supervise a fast through the coaching service, because fasting should, I tell people fasting is very individualized because of anyone's medical conditions, anyone's the medications that someone may be on. So if they're healthy, not on any medications, they could potentially do like a 3-day fast on their own. But anything past 3 days should be medically managed. There's just way too many, things that can come up. I have had patients, show up who, were just so shocked that, 1 or 2 days in, to believe it or not, 1 or 2 days into a fast, they're having all kinds of issues come up, and they needed that medical management even that quickly in. So once you get past 3 days, it's definitely something you want to be medically managed and supervised. Have your blood pressure monitored, your blood glucose monitored, some laboratories and different things, for sure.
And especially if they're on medication, because isn't it true that you can't fast if you're on most medications?
Yeah, you shouldn't be fasting on medications, period, if you're without medical management. And even under medical management here, there's only 1, possibly 2 medications that we will even consider keeping somebody on, but at a much lower dose.
I'm guessing thyroid might be one of them.
Yep, that's right, exactly.
I'm curious what the second one is now.
Sometimes we'll do some hormone therapy at a reduced dose, yeah. But otherwise, it's just strictly water, and be for good reason too, right? You have no idea what the side effect profile of these drugs would be with no food in your system, right? The levels could be significantly amplified and could be toxic to you very quickly. So you just don't know, right?
Have you ever undergone a water fast yourself at True North or anywhere else?
Yeah. So when I transitioned over just before I went into my attending role, I did a 14-day water fast. I was going to do 21 days, and I had actually a very, very easy fast. I experienced some of the common symptoms that some of my patients experience, which was good because I wanted to experience these things that they go through, so I could actually relate to them and have that conversation, knowing exactly what they're talking about. But I didn't get into some of the other symptoms I was hoping to have. It sounds kind of strange, but
Oh my God, you were hoping to have symptoms?
I was, because I wanted to have that ability to totally relate to them and describe what it's like, and to tell them that this is something that's transient, you will get through it potentially, or this is what we can do to help you through it. So I was hoping, but I didn't get them all the first time around, and it was pretty easy for me. I wanted to go 21, but had to limit it to 14 days just because I was losing more weight than I wanted. My metabolism was just really active.
Wow, but why 14 days?
Well, I have a history of rheumatoid arthritis, and so I wanted to really get at that, right to the core of the inflammatory disorder that I had, and I also had some systemic, even on the diet, even on like the whole food plant-based SOS free, I was still having some systemic inflammatory problems. And so with like muscles in my back and legs in particular, getting super tight and inflamed. And the fast, it was amazing. Like on, I would say day 5 of the fast, I just kind of woke up, and the day before it was there, and on day 5 you woke up and it's gone. And that was like the first time in many, many years, right, that I had felt this, body be free of that tightness, inflammation, pain, and I was just like, whoa, that's amazing. I've heard patients talk about it before I did my fast and thought that was really interesting and amazing. But when it actually happens to you and you experience it, that's a whole nother thing, for sure, to have that personal connection to it.
Yeah. So who was your doctor when you fasted?
Dr. Varesh.
Oh, nice. Well,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. She'll be on the show a little bit later in the week.
Yeah, exactly. And coming from the medical model, I actually wanted to have that experience with a naturopath, because we do come from different models and we have different approaches. And I was really interested in seeing that difference as a patient, right? To be, with an attending that comes from a different philosophy and different experience set. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
I actually did one of the phone coaching appointments with Dr. Varesh, and I'm a big fan because it's very intimate as opposed to like seeing a doctor, and it was wonderful. Can a patient that wants to do one with you do it from anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world?
Yeah, you can be anywhere. It doesn't matter, as long as you have a connection via video connection for Zoom, or even just on the phone. We do a lot of phone consultations too for coaching, because there's some people just either don't have the bandwidth or they don't have the interest in doing video, and they just want to do it on the phone. So you can make a choice of which way you want to do it. Yeah.
Oh,
the only difference, obviously, with coaching, so I just want to make this kind of clear, is we can't do medical management of your conditions because we're not your provider. And, there's licensure issues. And so if you're not in the same state as the other person or don't have licensure in that state, you can't be, prescribing medications or doing medical kind of interventions. This is something that's coaching, right? So something that we can help you work through many different things in conjunction with your medical providers.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Are there particular conditions that you really like working with?
Yeah, I tend to specialize in the cardiovascular field. I've got a vast experience in cardiovascular surgery and medicine, and it's for 15 plus years. And so I tend to have many patients with those cardiovascular conditions. So hypertension in particular, coronary artery disease, valvular problems are the ones I kind of see the most, or other metabolic kind of conditions. But I'll see, a wide variety of conditions as well.
Nice. Well, what's it like working with Dr. Alan Goldhammer?
Yeah, you know what? It's great. It's fantastic. It was kind of interesting when I first kind of met him and was working with him, getting to know him, because he's got a different personality and different sense of humor. But that's
a nice way of putting it. Yes, I adore him actually, but he's very unique.
Very unique, and he's awesome. Yeah, like he must have the biggest heart in the world to be doing this for over 30 years, right? And to do what he does on a daily basis, because it's just amazing. Yeah. And he started this before it was ever a thing, when it was so difficult and people were coming after him, and to persevere through all of that and to get it to where it is now. And it's still got a long way to go. But because I think, fasting is becoming, popular, if you want to say that, popular, or the in thing in a lot of circles, intermittent fasting and different types of fasting. And there's some, good research that's starting to come out now. So it's starting to become more, people are getting educated about it more. They're hearing about it more, exposed to it more. So I think in the future, it's going to be much busier than it is now. There'll be more fasting kind of centers. And I think in the future, this is going to be a much more accepted thing than it has been in the past.
Right. What's interesting is, I've been vegan 44 years, and I think he's been even a year longer than me. He's about a year older than me. But to know about SOS Free back then, I never even heard about it until like really 2008.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely amazing. Like, to think, back then that he would have the experience and foresight to kind of even think in those regards, right? Of salt, oil, sugar free, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Well, I had a hard time finding out anything about you on the internet. So do you have a social media presence? Is there a way for people to connect with you or follow you, or just, if they like you, maybe just book a coaching appointment?
I kind of like the fact that I'm hard to find on the internet, because I'm a very kind of, I do like my privacy. I do like my kind of being able to step away from my practice. And so I'm not a big social media person, to be honest with you. So I don't have public accounts. And at some point, I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet, as I get into this longer, and I'm just going to have to do it. But no, that's why you had such a hard time finding me. I mean, if you searched, with the physician assistant, you probably would have found a lot of more stuff, because I was the president of the Canadian Academy of Association of Physician Assistants for a few years. And I did lots of kind of work to establish the PA profession in Canada. So you probably would have found me there, but just not on social media.
It's funny, because when I hear PA, because I used to be in show business, I think production assistant. But
yeah, definitely.
I think you're the first one at True North, aren't you?
Yes, I'm the first PA in True North. So I have this uncanny kind of history of being the first PA in a lot of places that I've been. I don't know what that is, because there's so many PAs out there, but it's been a unique experience, and I feel really blessed, because I ended up going to Canada from working as a PA in the US, and I was the first civilian licensed PA in Canada at that time. So I was like, the unicorn, right? And so I helped establish, the PA presence and profession in my hospital, which is a large tertiary hospital at the time, through the Department of Surgery. And then I helped establish it kind of throughout that hospital. And then they hired me to do it in the region, because things are very different in Canada with socialized medicine. So here it's all individual silos of hospitals for the most part. You get the big Kaisers and like Kaiser Permanentes and different entities in HMOs, but in Canada it's all done, with health regions, right? So you're talking about a health region will have one or more cities, right, where it manages all the healthcare. So I ended up being kind of the go-to person for a health region and then the entire province to establish the profession. So I've been very blessed. Yeah.
Well, you must have impressed Dr. Goldhammer for him to offer you a job that quickly during your internship, because there have been many interns, and still are, that go to True North that don't end up working there.
Yeah, and I think we just kind of connected. I had a lot of experience coming here. I'm not coming here right out of the school, or during the school. I had 15 years of cardiovascular experience before I came here. So I think that is a little different than a lot of the interns that come here. And I think he probably saw that I was excited about what they were doing here, and I was like I said, I definitely drank the Kool-Aid, and I think it showed.
You drank the sugar-free Kool-Aid.
Exactly, yeah. For sure.
Is your rheumatoid arthritis in remission now, would you say?
Mine, yes, definitely. Yeah. For sure.
Is it, because I know Dr. Goldhammer always talks about people with autoimmune conditions that are sometimes his favorite patients, because one little slip causes them pain. So is keeping on the straight and narrow important to you for this?
Oh, absolutely. Because it doesn't take much, right? You can, eat the wrong foods, right? Or eat one of these foods is a trigger for you if you have an autoimmune condition, and just cause a complete flare, right? And then you're almost back at square one sometimes, or you get enough of a taste of the pain or inflammation or swelling that you're like, oh my goodness, okay, I definitely won't be doing that again, right? You hope anyways. You hope that's the response.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you think that for some people, though, a rheumatoid arthritis can be alleviated just with the diet, without the fasting, if they're really compliant?
I think that definitely can happen just through the nutrition alone, without the fasting, if they're really, on point with it and really strict. Because it is a very anti-inflammatory diet. It's super clean. You're going to be detoxifying just by eating this clean nutrition. So we have people that come to True North just to eat, right? Just to get the clean, healthy nutrition. And some of them struggle as much as the fasters, right? Because their bodies detoxify so much, even just with eating the food. And so that shows you how important that is, right? So yeah, I think you definitely can see people improve with nutrition only. I think the fasting gets them there faster and has a more anti-inflammatory kind of response or push in a shorter time frame, though, for sure.
What I like about the fasting is it helps people neuroadapt in like the food faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a big, huge component, right? So as far as recidivism and people sticking to it, is getting that neuroadaptation. And when we talk about neuroadaptation, we're talking about changes that are happening to your taste and taste buds, basically, right? And so if you fast for a period of time, usually over 7 days, but sometimes it can happen before, you have a neuroadaptation, we call it, where your taste buds deal with salt, oil, and sugar completely different. So you kind of get away from the cravings now. You lose those cravings, and when you come out of the fast and into the refeed, the food tastes completely different. Like, I experience it personally, but I hear it from my patients all the time, where they'll eat a piece of, say, celery and go, oh my gosh, the flavor of the celery is amazing. And for most people that, they have celery and it's like, okay, there's not much flavor to it, right? But now all of a sudden, even something like that is just tastes wonderful because they're actually tasting it for the first time, in most cases, right?
Yeah, that I remember when I was working at True North, oftentimes the first food the patient got after fasting for solid food was steamed zucchini, and they would eat it like you would think they were eating a hot fudge sundae.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's so different once you get that neuroadaptation back. I remember after my fast, I was so excited to break my fast and have juice. Like, it's so funny, right? You think about how excited you get just to go and have a juice or some watermelon chunks, right?
Oh yeah, the watermelon chunks.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited to get them. And so when I got them, I was just like in heaven because the flavors were just like jumping out at me. And I was just like, oh, I totally understand now what, all these patients have been telling me.
Food tastes so much better when your palate has been.
Oh, yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable difference.
It's so funny because people think that they won't enjoy eating this way, but they won't at first, but once their taste buds have gone through rehab, things like watermelon chunks are just incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. Like, you getting that adaptation to your taste buds makes a world of difference. And I've had so many people tell me, I never thought that I would want to continue eating this way after the fast. I thought it was going to be a struggle, but they look at their plate. It looks beautiful because of all the colors and textures of all the different plant foods, which are amazing, right? But then they get the taste with it too. And so, they said, I'm actually going to have a much easier time, eating this way than I thought. So sometimes people are very surprised.
Yeah. What's the most incredible story of healing you've seen since you've been there?
Let's see. I would say there's been many, but I would say probably the two things that jump out at me are the reduction in tumor sizes on people, because some people have come with really large tumors, and to see those tumors kind of shrink away is really significant. And just that's something you'll never forget, right? Because it's something that people don't think is a possibility. So those always kind of get me every time I see that. And because I come from a cardiovascular kind of background, I just am amazed still at how well people respond with their hypertension. You know, because I'm so used to treating hypertension, and all my colleagues back in cardiovascular treat with medications. And so some people are on all kinds of toxic medications. You know, they might be on, 3 or 4 medications just for their heart or more, right? And so to see them come and get off of their hypertensive medications and have normal blood pressures, right, with the no medications when they leave, is, to me, mind-boggling, right? At least it was initially. Now I'm starting to get more accustomed to it, but still amazed by it.
Wow. Are you one of the doctors that lectures at True North?
You know what? I was just about to start lecturing at True North, but I lost all of my data and information that I had on my computer. I just built 3 or 4 different lectures to present at True North, and like a week before I was going to present, I lost all of my data, and so I'm in the process of rebuilding it now. So I haven't started yet, but I will be. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So one of the things I keep hearing from Dr. Goldhammer is that now that he's doing the health coaching phone services, some people just aren't coming, meaning not because they don't want to, because they're getting better without having to travel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, that's kind of a running joke around here a bit, right? Is, I'm sending you some people, with certain issues that you can, help through phone coaching, but don't do your normal thing and get them better so they don't come here, just because some of the interventions that they can just do on their own after some coaching, will result in the fact that there's a significant improvement in their health and well-being, and they don't need to come anymore, or they'll put it off to come at a different time. They don't have to, it's less urgent to come.
Right. That's amazing. Like I've heard Dr. Goldhammer say that he's talked to people about how they have to change the diet even before they fast, have an easier time, and then they change the diet and then they don't have to come because that was really what was the problem in the first.
Absolutely. See it all the time. Yeah. And preparation before coming to True North, especially if you want to do a fast, water fast, preparation is key. So you want to listen to the instructions. You want to be, eating the instructions of, vegetables, like a vegan diet, but also kind of on the greens, steamed greens, raw vegetables, raw fruits, with not too complex carbohydrates of the the beans and stuff in the couple days leading into the fast. Because the cleaner you are, and the more and 100% plant-based, it's going to be a much easier transition into the fast and less symptoms. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy by any means, because some people come in and they're whole food plant-based for years and still have troubles detoxifying and having fasting symptoms. But it's much easier than it could have been if they were coming directly off a standard American diet, and then all of a sudden you go to fast them, for sure.
That's got to be a shock. One of the things I think people don't understand is you don't fast to lose weight. Although you lose fat, you lose weight fasting, because I hear them get upset. Well, I refed and I gained half my weight back. They don't understand that they didn't gain any fat back from that.
Yeah, so fasting, we try and tell people, that this is not for weight loss. Like, shouldn't be the main reason for coming in and fasting. Although a lot of people do, just because it's more to do really, it's more to kind of change your health and health outcomes, and the health of your body. The changes that can happen through fasting are amazing, right? So we talk about autophagy. So autophagy is like a cellular kind of recycling, where it kind of causes cells that are damaged, diseased, or just kind of old and need to be recycled, to do it much quicker than the body would normally do it. And some of the cells, for example, so you have cancer cells, they can't adapt to the fast as well as a normal body cell would. And so during the fast, you kind of starve out of that glucose. And oftentimes what happens is those cells get kind of recycled and they die off. And that's why we see the tumor reductions. And so you want to do it for the autophagy. Hormesis is another word that you hear a lot about in fasting. And that's where the fast puts a stress condition on the cells. And then the cells kind of adapt to that stress and become stronger. right? And so that's another thing that we want to think about. There's some research by Dr. Walter Longo out there, about longevity. So, the telomeres that are part of the DNA strand that look at your length of lifespan, there's some evidence shows that they lengthen with fasting, right? So a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting and different things to lengthen their telomeres, and so they'll have longer life and a healthier and longer life, right? The anti-inflammatory process of the fast, to get rid of all the information that we're constantly exposed to, from our exposures every day, from the food we eat and drink to the chemicals that are on everything we touch, right? So that we have to kind of get out of our system, to reboot our microbiomes, which are so crucial to our health and well-being, and probably, as we're finding out, are probably going to be the most important thing in our overall health and consciousness is a healthy microbiome. So if you can fast and kind of reboot that, so that when you give it plant food, whole plant food, and all the different fibers that are in the plant food, that will become more broader, more robust, improve your inflammation, because you won't have leaky gut anymore. They'll improve your immunity, which is, in times of this with COVID and other kind of infectious diseases, is going to be huge, to improve your immunity through the phytonutrients, phytochemicals, and so yeah, it's there's many reasons to do it, right? But it's usually to treat something or for preventative health, but health related, yeah, not just weight loss. That is a wonderful side effect, fasting, obviously. We have success stories of people that have lost, 200 pounds or more, right? That does happen, but it's not just from fasting. That's more from a lifestyle change and eating the healthy nutrition, right? The fasting gives them little jump starts where they're positively affecting some health conditions, but then it's what they do after the fast, all the nutrition that they put in their body, that makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for clarifying that, because it's not a quick fix fasting. It's a medical supervised thing that not everybody should do or has to do, but it's not for weight loss. And that's
absolutely
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit. I hope to see you one of these days. I hope to get back to True North sometime. It's been a few years. I always love it there. For me, it's more like a vacation.
Yeah, that's that's fantastic. I'm really happy I finally got to meet you. Unfortunately not in person, but virtually. And I really look forward to seeing you when you come here, for sure.
Right. And I can't wait till you get your files together, because maybe you can come back and give the presentation you were going to give if you had the files.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to do some presentations for you in the future, definitely.
Thank you so much. And if somebody wants to book a phone coaching appointment with you, we'll have all the links in the show notes right below this video, and they can do that.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And thanks for the opportunity to meet your audience. And I look forward to hopefully meeting some of you over the phone or in person.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when we have another wonderful doctor from the True North Health Center who does phone coaching, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.